Are you a business owner stuck in fear, doubt, and worry about what the marketplace will look like in the future? Then this show is for you. Strap on your seatbelt and get ready to disrupt and innovate. Here's your host, Lisa Levy.
Tracy Christian is a powerhouse talent agent and the visionary founder behind Sante Grace, a luxury plus-sized fashion brand that's redefining style for curvy, professional women. After more than 20 years in the entertainment industry working with A-list talent like Octavia Spencer and Busta Rhymes, Tracy found herself in a frustrating dilemma. There simply weren't enough high fashion forward, high quality clothing options in her size. Instead of settling, she took matters into her own hands, literally. She designed her wardrobe for high profile events like the Oscars. She's here to share how she's shaking up both the entertainment and fashion industries with bold vision, style, and an unapologetic authenticity. Tracy, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you for having me, Lisa. I'm pleased to be here.
I am so excited. I mean, obviously, I am a plus size woman who has a hard time finding clothes that actually work. And for major events, I pay people to make my outfits. And it's expensive and time consuming. So obviously I get how you started and why you started, but tell us why Sante Grace is important and why it's so meaningful right now.
I mean, I could go on and on about this. I could go on about how women are socialized to settle. But I'll just say that there's no reason that we should be augmenting our bodies to accommodate clothes. Clothes should be accommodating us, right? Like, there's no man that you meet that has the attitude, I'm going to buy this suit because I'm going to force myself to lose 5 or 10 pounds and then the suit will fit. But every woman I've ever met, all, socioeconomic levels, everything, all cultures has done that at least once in her life. All women have bought something and thought, oh, I'll put on my Spanx, or my Skims, and then these pants will fit fine, or I just need this type of brassiere. And I just took it didn't come overnight, but I just took a different, point of view. Truly, my industry is kind of ruled by men, and I looked around at how they were able to maneuver, because even when you're in something like Cannes, and they have a rule, it was in the rule books for many years. Women had to wear heels on the red carpet, period. It didn't matter if you were a publicist just following your client, an agent, whatever. If you were female identifying, and you were on the red carpet, heels. And men just had so much more freedom, right? It was a suit or a tuxedo, and you were good to go. And we had all of these encumbrances. So I just wanted, and as you said, the bigger you are, the more difficult it is to find clothes for life. Okay?
Yeah.
Never mind special occasions, clothes for life. And I grew up having to be in stores, buy something, not particularly because I loved it, but because it fit. And I thought, okay, oh, this fits. Let me just buy it. The occasion will come up for it, right? Because I didn't want to be without clothes. It touches every area. Like, I couldn't find ski clothes that fit. I'd always have to buy men's clothes. Never mind suiting or date or whatever. And I think once you become like a woman who's kind of climbing the corporate ladder, that need for proper clothing is just exacerbated. But now I'm speaking too long. I should be speaking in sound bites. But yeah,
No, it's a fabulous conversation, right? And it's an important point because we are conditioned to settle. And as you're talking through that, I'm thinking back on just, trips I've had to, a department store, right? Walking into Macy's or Dillard's or at least those two stores might have clothing in my size, because if I went into Neiman or Nordstrom's, depending on the year, there was absolutely no option. I could buy my shoes there, and that was probably it. Um, but then, right, settling for the things, and I'm getting closer to the age where this is more me than not me, but right, clothes that my grandmother would have worn were the
Oh,
options.
oh, the
The patterns, the
older,
colors, the cut.
the mother, everything was mother of the bride, you know.
And it's like ugly and it's shapeless and the patterns, and I own this. I'm not in my 20s anymore. But things that grandma, I would have seen grandma in, and it's like, I can't buy it.
Well,
I
things that
can't
you
go
would have
out and
seen
buy
grandma in even 30 years ago,
it. Right.
right? Like,
Totally.
and textiles. The other thing too is the textiles that you would have seen grandma in. Uh,
Polyester.
the polyester. Look, I started Sante Grace because I wanted to end the crying in the fitting room. Just
Right.
period, point blank. I want us to have the same options as girls who are a size 4 or 6. Period. I want you, if you want to be high fashion, great, or just fashionable, stylish. If you want to have silk and linens, that's what Sante Grace is all about. And it actually, that kind of dressing, when you don't have those options, it hinders our process in the job market. You know, I'd say like when I came up in entertainment, you'd have a supervisor or boss or whatever, and you'd say, okay, so success looks like my boss, right? That's my next position. But if your boss was a size 8 and you were a size 16, you could never emulate your boss because those clothes stopped at size 10 or 12. You could never wear that. You could get the bag, maybe the shoes, but you couldn't even get the jewelry, right? Because maybe your neck is a little
Mhm.
larger, your wrist is a little larger. So
Mhm.
it's right. So for me, it was about an equality of opportunity. And then there's a whole thing about women in the marketplace, but it's also about building confidence, you know, about you being able to represent and not saying you got to love my clothes or anything, but in your mind, Lisa, there's a way that you want to look. And the idea that no matter how much money you have, that you can't create that look was unacceptable to me. So I designed a line that was the way I wanted to look. I love Halston. I love Yves Saint Laurent. I love, the way Corinne Redfield styles. I love Chloe. So our line is very reminiscent of those types of silhouettes.
And that is very much high fashion and luxury in touch and texture and feel. And even today, where more women are over a size 12 or greater than not in America, finding those
67%.
fabrics, 67% of women
We
wear a size
we
12
are the
or
majority.
greater.
Yes. Can you imagine that? We are the majority, but they make clothes for the minority.
And they publicize, right, all of the images that come at us are of the minority, and right, that great hope, right? Oh, I'm going to spiral into a whole different conversation about the weight loss industry, the fitness industry, and all of these things where they're putting out the unattainable reality to drive their profit margins. That's
It's
a
true.
conversation for another day.
It's totally true.
with with the brand, so you have spent the majority of your career, right, was in the entertainment industry as a working as a talent agent, right? Building the brand of Sante Grace is your step into entrepreneurship. Describe the journey a little bit. What lessons have you learned along the way?
Well, first of all, I'm still a talent agent. That's still, my a job. And then during the pandemic, extraordinary, circumstances. I just thought to myself, if I exit the pandemic the same person that I was coming into it, something's wrong with me. I didn't know what I was going to do. Am I going to learn language or whatever? And one day, it was like divine intervention. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I heard a voice say, "Start your clothing line." And it was something that I'd always wanted to do, but I couldn't do it because of the time and the money and, all of the other things. But now the world had literally stopped. And particularly my job, you couldn't be on a set. There were no sets. So I had all of this time. So I had to, learn fashion production and manufacturing. I'd already worked for a textile converter when I was, in my early 20s. So I had some knowledge of textiles, fabrics, that kind of thing. And I'd sewn my own clothes before, and my grandmother had been instrumental with that. So I came in with a bit of knowledge, but I didn't know anything about ecom. I had to take those online classes. And another thing that happened was, at least in the United States, a lot of schools and businesses responded by putting their courses online. So I was able to attend Parsons, something I never would have been able to do otherwise, online, right? And I would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, have my tea, and attend Parsons. And then, go back and try to find out if there was a movie going anywhere in the world and if I could, you know, wedge a client into it. But because there was all of this time, I could do it. And because, LA is one of the garment focuses or centers in the United States, there were unfortunately thousands of people who were out of work. So when I started this business, I knew I didn't want to go overseas. I wanted to employ folks who are my neighbors. I wanted us to have a low carbon footprint. I wanted to help be, one of the supporters or founders of Los Angeles in the garment district, right? I wanted to bring production back to LA. And I knew I could get really top drawer people who are normally working on these very high end collections. I knew I could get them for a price because there was no work. So we created a collection that looks like it was produced in Italy or France, but literally they're produced 5 miles from my home. And that was, like I said, that was so important to me. I'm a serial entrepreneur, and to me, one of the ways I measure success is when you have staff members or contractors who are telling you about how they're moving their kids from public school to private school, or they just bought a home or whatever, and your dollars contribute to that. That's success, that we're all coming up together. And then the flip side of it is that you have clients who are calling you and demanding more stuff, you know?
Isn't
Uh,
it fun when, right, that demand, right? There's greater need than you can fulfill, and what a great problem to have.
like it's nice for them to compliment me on what we have, but I love the audacity of, well, why don't you have swimsuits too? I need something that matches with the kimono. And I love the audacity of demand. So, yeah, I love the creation of it and
Mhm.
sustaining. Like, how do I continue to grow this company? How do I make this product available to more women? Um, and I didn't know that we were being radicals. I thought we were just creating clothes, right?
Mm.
And the conversations that I've had about the price point, the look, have been very interesting.
Anytime we challenge the status quo or rock the boat of norm, it's amazing what happens. So tell us a little bit about that experience, because this is, right, you're targeting the majority of women. You are bringing forward high quality, right? The opposite of everything you and I have discussed, right, about what we had to go through in our shopping experiences throughout our professional career. How did the industry respond?
So the industry, it's so bizarre. Um, it's a kind of, obviously I'm a Black person, I'm a Black woman. It's a kind of racism or prejudice, right? Because if I had a company, if I had a store and we're trying to figure out how to stay profitable, right? We're hearing that on the news. People aren't going to malls, all of that. I would say, okay, well, I'll do plus size. That's the majority of the population, especially in the United States. Western bodies are bigger, period, right? And they refuse to. They absolutely refuse to. So it reminds me of when I read in history, stores trying to figure out how to make money. And a store would say, okay, well, there's all these Black people here. Why don't I allow them to shop in my store? And then they would refuse to, right? So it's a little bit of the same kind of thing, which just is so backwards. I don't know if they think like a bunch of fat people are going to roll into the store with chocolate all over their pudgy little fingers. And I don't know what they think plus size people look like.
Yeah.
So they just would not make clothes for bigger people, would not. And because the stores wouldn't make plus size clothes, when I went to factories and said, okay, so here's my pattern and, I want to produce this, they said they didn't know how. Like, for those who don't sew, a pattern is a blueprint. Literally,
Yeah.
it tells you everything from the size of the stitch that you don't have to, if you're a factory, you don't have to imagine anything. It's right there in black and white. Okay. And they would say, I don't know how to follow the pattern. Well, I've never. They were afraid. They were afraid. And they, so I'd give them the pattern, then they'd try and I'd get it and I'd say, why is the neck all the way out here? Did you follow the pattern? Or why is the neck like this? Did you follow? Well, I thought the pattern was wrong. Why did you think the pattern was wrong? And when you go and you do production, you give the factory a sample and so they can, reference what it's supposed to look like. They had never dealt with plus size patterns and plus size considered patterns, right? So part of the thing when you have a bridge or a better line, a more expensive line, is I'm thinking about not just making the clothes so that it fits. I want the clothes so that it's tailored. I'm thinking, okay, so if she's a size 16, she may not have this thing yet, but when she's a size 28, she definitely does, right? So I'm making adjustments for the sleeve. I'm uh I know a lot of plus size women, we're well endowed or better endowed than someone who's a size two. So I'm compensating for that. I am, you might be bigger at the bottom, but compensating for the waist. How do I cut into the pattern so that she still has a feminine silhouette? All of these things. So I had to find and train, people, sewers, how to sew plus size clothing, which I thought was crazy. And
Considering that a pattern is a pattern and the whole point is to not deviate from the pattern, I
it's
mean,
right.
it's sort of mind
It's
boggling, right?
it's insane, right? If I don't know how to make quiche, the first time I make the quiche, I follow the recipe explicitly. They say get an 8-inch pan, right? Right? We've all had
Hmm.
instructions, right? And then the better you get at it, you can. I don't have to measure the salt. I know how to. But yeah, but that part was interesting. The most interesting thing was women contacting me and saying that that fat women didn't deserve these clothes. That was number one. Fat women didn't deserve the clothes. Uh, and then two, that the clothes were too expensive. How do you think we're going to afford these clothes? And a ton of men, a ton of men voicing things about women's bodies that I really won't even go into. But the women, I would start a dialogue with them and I'd say, okay, you feel like the clothes are too expensive. How much did your last cashmere sweater cost? And the woman would
I've
say,
never bought one because they didn't exist. Yeah. The shock of I've never had access to it, so there's no frame of reference to know value versus quality, value, price, right? It's a little it's a little triangle that we can play with, and if you've never had access to something, how can you rationalize it being too expensive or not? It blows my mind, Tracy, that the response of women, men, it doesn't surprise me, right? We see it, we
right,
hear it every day. But
right.
it always just sort of breaks my heart when women sabotage other women and tear us down. And someday we will figure it out that we are stronger together and better together, and that we should all be lifting up. That tearing down is just adds no value.
The other weird thing to me was there was a showroom, kind of ritzy, showroom here in Los Angeles that approached us and we said, sure, we'd, love to do business with you. So in my mind, I thought, oh, who are they going to be sending these clothes to? I don't know, but that's not my job. Let them do whatever. Lisa, it was all these skinny models and actors and VIPs who were wearing my clothes. I kid you not. I kid you not. There wasn't a plus size girl in the bunch, which educated me. And I thought, it's not about what women need to do is forget about the size, forget about the number in the clothes and wear what you like, right? Like if I have a jumpsuit and you want it really baggy, oversized, the way you see Sarah Jessica Parker wear it in Sex in the City, get the size that will allow you that silhouette. If you want something that's a little, more form fitting the way a Sofia Vergara would wear it, then get that. Stop being so hooked on this number. But
I love that, right? The number and different lines, the numbers lie, right? We've redefined the numbers, and depending on it, right? So yeah, the number shouldn't matter. Wear what you want. Wear what
yeah, forget about the number.
expresses your style.
Always. That's the important point. And you see all this gray hair. I'm a little older, but I came from a generation where my mom really she invested in a wardrobe, right? Both for myself and for herself. And there were lots of, we didn't call it fast fashion then, but there were mall stores, learners or, these different kind of kiddie stores where, the clothes weren't very expensive and they're very trendy, what have you, right? And that's when you get your birthday money and you'd run to the mall and buy some cheapy whatever. But the foundations of my wardrobe were always, I had a nice dress, probably in a dark color, that I could wear to church or a formal event or whatever. I always had a suit, if I had a job interview or school interview or something like that. And then I had my hanging out with my friends and what was cool, but it was always quality. A Coach bag or a Louis Vuitton bag, nice jeans and what and you built around that. You built around that. Unfortunately, this generation underneath us, they never had that experience. So they purchase on volume, right? Not on
Mm,
value. And
yeah.
we've seen what that does, to our environment, to just the business ecosystem. We've tried it and we see why it doesn't work. So what I say to women is clothing or your wardrobe should be like your eating plan. I love Taco Bell, but I know I can't eat it every day, right? If I ate it every day, I'm going to be bigger. I'm going to have, not just that, I'm going to have high blood pressure. I'm going to have all these of the other problems. And fast fashion is the same way. I'm not here to say end fast fashion. I think some of that stuff is really fun and really has a place. However, when you buy better, you can afford to buy less,
Yes.
right? And you can afford to have things tailored to your body. Like at Sante Grace, we do quite a bit of tailoring. And again, that was new for women. They were accustomed to going in the store, just buying something that fit, and I wear it. And it's just kind of hanging off my shoulder. And and they felt like that's what I deserve because I'm not the size that I should be. So I'm wearing like a schmata and I look, 20 years older than I am. And I'll correct all of this once I, finish my diet.
Tracy, if this is resonating for members of the audience, how do they find Sante Grace and see the line?
You can find us on Instagram, we're Sante Grace, TikTok, if it still exists, Sante Grace, and our website, which is santegrace.com.
Okay, audience members, all of those links will be in the show notes so it's easy for you to find. Tracy, I appreciate you joining me today and having a conversation that is designed to talk to the majority of women in the US, especially. And I love how you leveraged the pandemic to not only build new skills and capabilities for yourself, but to do something that was a new business that would actually impact the quality of women's lives and the quality of lives of people in your neighborhood who were not working and taking advantage of an opportunity that was unprecedented to really truly disrupt inside of an industry that is so callous towards the people who have the most disposable income to spend on their products in the marketplace. So women, if you are interested in high quality clothing, please check out Sante Grace. Tracy, I appreciate you being with me today, and everybody else, you know the rules. Don't get left behind. Join me next time.
That's it for today's episode of Disrupt and Innovate. Head over to iTunes and subscribe to the show.